In the highest echelons of fine dining, cooking is no longer an art form. It is a brutal, unforgiving science. When you're operating at the level of molecular gastronomy, when you're charging people $1,000 a plate, you are not just searing meat or chopping vegetables. You are manipulating the fundamental chemistry of the ingredients. You are using hydrocolloids, liquid nitrogen, and precise pH buffers to trick the human brain, turning liquids into perfectly spherical solids and transforming solid proteins into edible vapor. A true chef at this level is a chemist. A single gram of sodium alginate out of place, a temperature fluctuation of half a degree, in a masterpiece instantly turns into absolute garbage. I spent 15 years of my life mastering that delicate razor-thin line between perfection and disaster. I just never realized that while I was meticulously balancing the chemistry in my kitchen, the chemistry in my own marriage was turning incredibly toxic. My name is Elias. I'm 38 years old, and I am an executive chef specializing in avant-garde molecular gastronomy. 5 years ago, I married Chloe. Chloe was a luxury hospitality public relations director. She was magnetic, incredibly articulate, and thrived in the glamorous, champagne-soaked world of elite restaurant openings. I was the obsessive, introverted chef who spent 18 hours a day in a windowless kitchen, smelling like truffles, bone broth, and ozone. We were a classic pairing. I created the magic behind the swinging doors, and she sold the magic to the elite critics in the dining room. For 4 agonizing, exhausting years, I spent every single one of my days off locked in my private test kitchen, developing my absolute magnum opus. I called it the Ether Menu. It was a revolutionary 15-course tasting menu that completely defied logic. It featured dishes like a translucent glowing pearl that tasted exactly like a smoked ribeye, and a dessert that floated 2 inches above the plate using magnetic repulsion and dry ice. It was the culmination of my life's work, a menu that was absolutely guaranteed to secure 3 Michelin stars. The proprietary recipes, the exact chemical ratios, and the sourcing contracts were locked in a highly encrypted digital database on my local server. I told Chloe this menu was our golden ticket. I promised her that when we finally opened our own flagship restaurant, we would be culinary royalty. She wouldn't have to work for anyone else ever again. But Chloe didn't want to build a restaurant from the ground up with me. She looked at my burn-scarred hands and my grueling 100-hour work weeks, and she decided she wanted the Michelin stars without the burns. And she found a billionaire who was more than happy to help her steal them. The rot in our marriage started when Chloe's PR firm was hired by a massive global restaurant conglomerate. The CEO of that conglomerate was a man named Sterling. Sterling was 45 years old and the absolute poster boy for everything wrong with the modern hospitality industry. He wasn't a chef. He couldn't even cook an egg. He was a ruthless corporate financier who bought up struggling, passionate restaurants, fired the original chefs, and replaced their menus with cheap, mass-produced garbage while doubling the prices for wealthy tourists. He drove a customized Bentley, wore velvet dinner jackets, and treated brilliant chefs like disposable hourly laborers. Suddenly, Chloe was spending all her time at Sterling's glass tower headquarters, claiming she was advising him on a massive new hospitality acquisition. The red flags didn't just quietly appear, they flared up like a grease fire on a hot stove. First, the profound, unapologetic disrespect. Chloe started actively belittling my life's work. "Elias, you need to wake up," she scoffed one evening, tossing her $4,000 handbag onto our kitchen counter. "Sterling manages a $500 million portfolio. He flies critics to Dubai on private jets. You're just a line cook obsessed with playing scientist in a basement. You lack corporate vision. Nobody cares about your stupid glowing spheres. They care about the branding." Second, the intense, unnatural secrecy regarding her devices. Chloe changed the passcode on her phone and her laptop. She started taking crisis PR calls in her car, sitting in the driveway with the engine running for 40 minutes before coming inside. Third, and by far the most terrifying, was her sudden, highly specific interest in my digital recipe database. Chloe, a woman who couldn't be bothered to ask how my day was, suddenly asked me if the chemical ratios for the Aether menu were finalized and if the database was cloud accessible. She claimed she needed to show a redacted version to potential investors. When a PR director suddenly asks about the cloud accessibility of your unpatented trade secrets, you don't answer the question. You run a security audit. When you develop proprietary culinary technology that could potentially generate tens of millions of dollars, you don't just leave it sitting on a standard iPad. My entire test kitchen network was routed through a custom firewall that logged every single byte of data moving across the local area network. One night, at 2 a.m., while Chloe was supposedly sleeping in the guest room, my phone vibrated with a critical priority alert from the kitchen server. Someone was actively attempting to execute a mass file transfer from my secure recipe database to an unauthorized external cloud storage locker. I didn't storm upstairs and kick the door open. I simply isolated the connection, artificially slowed the transfer speed to a crawl to buy myself time, and mirrored her laptop screen directly to my monitors in the kitchen. She had her encrypted messaging app open, communicating in a private chat with Sterling. I didn't just find an affair. I found a premeditated, multi-million-dollar act of corporate espionage. Sterling wrote, "My executive chefs just looked at the early wireframes of the Aether menu you sent. They're completely losing their minds. The spherification techniques are 10 years ahead of anything happening in Europe. If we launch this as our new flagship restaurant at my $15 million property in Las Vegas next month, the critics will go wild. Do you have the master database yet?" Chloe replied, her words dripping with a casual, horrifying cruelty that made the blood freeze in my veins. "I'm downloading the master repository from his server right now. The idiot actually thinks I care about his underdog dreams. Tomorrow, I'll hand the drive to your kitchen staff. Once your restaurant wins the Michelin stars, Elias's little catering business will go bankrupt. I'll serve him with divorce papers the morning after opening night. He has no money, no lawyers, and no patents. He's just a naive line cook, Sterling. I can't wait to stand on the red carpet with you." Sterling responded, "You're a genius, baby. The cook is going to buy us our next yacht." I sat alone in the sterile, quiet kitchen, the hum of the refrigerators filling the absolute silence, staring at the glowing monitor as my entire reality shattered. My wife of 5 years was sleeping with a corporate parasite. Together, they were actively plotting to steal 4 years of my blood, sweat, and genius, rebrand my life's work as their own, launch it in Las Vegas, and leave me utterly destroyed. They thought I was just a naive cook who chopped vegetables. They didn't understand the level of absolute, unmitigated biological destruction a master chemist is capable of cooking up.
If you want to destroy a rival restaurant, you don't burn down their building. You let them build a beautiful dining room, seat the critics, and then you quietly spoil the broth. I didn't confront her. If I did, Sterling's army of corporate lawyers would bury me in injunctions, claim I stole the recipes from them, and tie me up in court for a decade until I went bankrupt. I needed them to steal the database. I needed Sterling to proudly serve my food to the most elite, ruthless food critics in the world. So, I went to work on the back end of the database. I canceled her transfer, but I didn't lock her out. Instead, I created a perfectly cloned master repository folder and placed it right on my unprotected desktop. To Sterling's executive chefs, the recipes and chemical ratios inside would look absolutely flawless. When they prepped the food in their multi-million-dollar Vegas kitchen, it would look beautiful. It would smell divine. The signature dish, a glowing, translucent pearl of smoked Wagyu essence, would plate perfectly. But deeply embedded in the foundational chemistry of the hydrocolloids, buried so deep in the pH buffering ratios that no taste tester in a prep kitchen would ever find it, I wrote a biological logic bomb. I altered the ratio of sodium alginate and introduced a highly concentrated microscopic capsule of allyl mercaptan, the exact chemical compound responsible for the smell of raw garlic and rotting sulfur. Here was the trap. As long as the food was cold or sitting on a plate, it was perfectly stable. But I engineered the capsules to react violently to the specific amylase enzymes found in human saliva, combined with the 98-degree heat of a human mouth. Exactly 60 seconds after a person took a bite and swallowed, the chemical bonds would catastrophically break down in their stomach and esophagus. The beautiful, delicate flavor would violently invert, releasing a massive, uncontrollable wave of aggressive, putrid bitterness and the overpowering stench of rotting sulfur back up their throat. It wasn't dangerous, it wouldn't kill anyone, but it would induce immediate, uncontrollable gagging. I left the rigged folder on my desktop. I allowed her transfer to complete. I listened to the front door close as my wife stole my life's work, thinking she had just pulled off the heist of the century.
When Chloe handed me the divorce papers on Monday morning, she tried to look sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Elias," she lied smoothly, wearing her expensive designer coat. "I just need a man who lives in the real world, not a kitchen. You need to let me go." "I understand, Chloe," I said calmly, signing the papers without hesitation. "Good luck in the real world." The moment she moved out, I unleashed hell behind the scenes. I took my original, time-stamped, air-gapped hard drives containing the true recipes, my 4 years of developer logs, and my supplier contracts, and I flew directly to the most ruthless intellectual property litigator in the hospitality industry. While recipes themselves are notoriously hard to copyright, highly specific molecular chemical processes and proprietary extraction methods fall under heavy trade secret laws. We established an indisputable federally protected paper trail of my absolute ownership. Then, I showed my lawyer the encrypted messages of Chloe and Sterling actively conspiring to steal the database. My lawyer smiled like a shark smelling blood in the water. "Elias," he said, "Sterling's restaurant group is heavily backed by private equity. If their CEO takes stolen proprietary trade secrets and presents it to his investors as an in-house asset, that is massive federal corporate fraud." We drafted a massive federal lawsuit and a barrage of emergency injunctions, but we didn't file them. We waited. We let Sterling spend $15 million building his flagship restaurant in Las Vegas. We let him buy massive billboards on the Strip. We let him hype up his revolutionary culinary experience to every major food critic on the planet. They were building a massive, glittering glass castle, and I was holding the only stone.
Friday night, the grand opening of a breathtaking, ultra-luxury restaurant in Las Vegas. Crystal chandeliers, heavy velvet drapes, and hundreds of A-list celebrities, billionaires, and famous food critics. Sterling and Chloe stand at the head table, grinning. Elias is sitting in his dark test kitchen hundreds of miles away, watching the live social media feeds on his monitors. Friday night, the grand opening of Sterling's flagship restaurant, the Zenith, at a massive resort on the Las Vegas Strip. The dining room was packed with the most ruthless, influential food critics in the world, alongside A-list celebrities and mega-wealthy investors. A single seat at a table cost $1,500. I sat in my dark test kitchen, drinking a black coffee, watching the live, real-time updates from Instagram stories and food blogs on my center monitor. Sterling stood up at the center table, tapping a spoon against his crystal champagne flute. The the room went quiet. Chloe was standing right next to him, beaming with pride, wearing a dress that cost more than my car. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sterling announced, his voice oozing with arrogance. "For years, my culinary team has worked in secret to build the future of fine dining. Tonight, I am proud to present a menu that defies reality. Please enjoy the signature course, the Aether Sphere." On the social media live streams, I watched 100 synchronized waiters in white gloves place the beautiful, glowing, translucent pearls in front of the elite guests. The critics murmured in awe. The presentation was flawless. I looked at the clock on my wall. I knew the math. I knew the biology. The guests picked up their specialized spoons. They placed the spheres into their mouths. They smiled. The initial flavor burst was perfect. 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 50 seconds. At exactly 60 seconds, the amylase enzymes in 100 human mouths broke down the altered hydrocolloid walls. It started at table 4. A famous, incredibly harsh food critic from New York suddenly stopped smiling. His eyes went wide, his face contorted into a mask of pure, absolute disgust. He didn't politely spit the food into his napkin. The biological reaction was too aggressive. He violently gagged, lurching forward, coughing and hacking uncontrollably onto the pristine white tablecloth. Then it hit the rest of the room. It was like a shockwave of nausea across the entire luxurious dining room. Billionaires, celebrities, and investors started aggressively gagging. People were desperately grabbing for their water glasses, spitting half-chewed, foul-smelling gray sludge into their $500 linen napkins. The overwhelming, aggressive stench of rotting sulfur and raw garbage instantly filled the air-conditioned dining room. A wealthy socialite in the front row literally knocked her chair over, scrambling towards the restrooms, her hands covering her mouth. "What is happening?" Sterling screamed at his executive chef, totally unhinged, looking around the room in absolute horror. "It's the food! It tastes like rotting sewage!" a furious investor roared, throwing his napkin on the table and storming towards the exit. The entire grand opening dissolved into apocalyptic chaos. Diners were fleeing for the doors, coughing and cursing. The Instagram live streams captured every single agonizing, humiliating second of Sterling's elite guests fleeing his restaurant like it was on fire. I took a slow, deep sip of my coffee, smiled at the chaotic social media feeds, and texted my lawyer, "Serve them the check."
You cannot unserve a rotting dish to 100 billionaires. The fallout was an absolute apocalyptic corporate massacre. Within 20 minutes, the Las Vegas Health Department, called by furious guests, raided the kitchen. They shut the entire $15 million restaurant down on opening night, chaining the doors shut pending a massive biohazard investigation. Food critics who had attended the opening absolutely destroyed Sterling in the press the next morning. They called it the greatest culinary disaster in modern history. The hashtag Toxic Aether was trending globally. Because Sterling had served chemically altered food that caused physical illness, he was hit with dozens of multi-million-dollar lawsuits from his own elite guests. His investors pulled their funding immediately. His entire restaurant conglomerate's stock price plummeted, and he was ousted as CEO by his own board of directors in less than 48 hours. He was completely, utterly ruined financially. But the real fatal blow happened on Monday morning. My lawyer formally served Sterling and Chloe with a massive federal lawsuit for trade secret theft and corporate espionage. Chloe's life was vaporized. Sterling, realizing he was facing federal indictments and total bankruptcy, immediately blamed her. He told investigators that she was a rogue PR director who had supplied him with stolen toxic recipes without his knowledge, throwing her to the wolves to save himself. She called me from a hotel room in Vegas, sobbing so hard she was hyperventilating. Elias, please, the FBI contacted me. Sterling is suing me. You have to tell them you made a mistake with the recipe. Please, I'll do anything." "I didn't make a mistake, Chloe," I said calmly, leaning back in my chair.
You're the one who walked in and stole the poison. Good luck in the real world." I hung up and blocked her number. During our divorce settlement, she had absolutely zero leverage. Because she was facing criminal charges for corporate espionage against me, the judge awarded me 100% of the marital assets and denied her any alimony. She walked away with millions in legal debt and a permanently ruined reputation.
It's been 3 years since that grand opening in Vegas. Sterling's former conglomerate, desperate to settle my federal trade secret lawsuit and avoid total bankruptcy, paid me an $18 million out-of-court settlement just to make the IP lawsuit go away. I kept 100% ownership of my culinary techniques. I took the money and opened my own intimate 20-seat flagship restaurant in a quiet part of the city. We launched the real Aether menu. It didn't taste like garbage, it tasted like a masterpiece. Last year, we were awarded 3 Michelin stars. I never have to work for a corporate boss or worry about funding ever again. Last I heard, Chloe avoided prison by taking a plea deal, but she is completely blacklisted from the hospitality and PR industries globally. She is currently working as a hostess at a loud chain sports bar in the suburbs, handing out laminated menus, watching people eat frozen appetizers, knowing she threw away a masterpiece. Sterling is still buried in endless litigation, completely bankrupt, and permanently banned from operating any restaurant in the state of Nevada. If there is a lesson to be learned here, it's this. Never try to hijack a menu if you don't know the chef who wrote the recipe. If your partner thinks they can use you as a stepping stone, steal your genius, and leave you to rot in the kitchen while they take the credit, don't panic. Don't fight them for the hard drive. Smile, hand them the flash drive, let them build the $15 million dining room, and let them confidently serve your creation to the most powerful people in the world. And right when they think they've won, just sit back and watch them choke on their own greed. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments what's the absolute worst meal you've ever been served at a fancy restaurant. Stay sharp, trust the science, and always protect your recipes.